Hi, welcome to WizNugs. So today we wanted to talk about the whole reason why we actually started this podcast. And that was sometime last year, I had a young gentleman come up to me and ask me for mentorship. He was going through a hard time in his life and did not have a father figure to kind of give him some guidance or point him in the right direction. So after several months of doing that and things seemed to be going pretty well, I talked to Casey about it, and we decided that it might be a good idea to do a podcast that would offer kind of friendly fatherly advice. And so here we are. And today we decided we wanted to talk about what the whole mentorship was about, and that is breakups. So in life, we're going to live, we're going to love, and we're going to lose. And as cliche as that sounds, I don't know if that's even an actual word, but as cliche as that sounds.
It is now.
So in his particular case, he was in an engagement, and things turned sour, and they broke up, and he was in a situation of having to move out, having a place to live, not having anyone that he could depend upon or rely upon, and he was going to make some probably what I would consider bad decisions based off of that. So what we want to talk about first is some of the, again, do's and don'ts. This is subjective, but we do want to talk about some of the things that you would like to try to do and some things you would try to stay away from. So the first thing is making decisions out of emotion. And obviously at the very beginning of a breakup, you're going to be very emotional.
Yeah, so a breakup's a lot like a death in the fact of like it's a loss. It's a huge loss,
right,
of a big part of your life. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, and where do you go, right?
You have to grieve.
I mean, the majority of your time has probably been spent with this significant other. And so now you're in a place of now there is a void, right? And a lot of times it feels like it's a physical void because of the immense emotion that we go through. But what's important to remember is, as intense as this is going to be, you don't want to go out and start making decisions off of that emotion, because that's typically leads to bad results. And so an example would be is, if I'm going to join the military, or I'm going to move across the country, or I'm going to move to a different country, or, I'm going to change everything about myself and reinvent myself. Well, slow down.
When you're in a highly compromised emotional state, like after a death or after a breakup, you don't really know. You're not you're not you in the truest sense of the word.
Right. Because you are focused on a particular emotion, and that's grieving, if you would, or sadness, or even depression, right? It may not be the clinical depression, but it definitely feels like it. And so what are the right things to do, right?
Well, one of those along the lines of kind of processing it emotionally is you've got to let go of the future.
Right.
You can't make any long-term plans for at least that grieving period. So I don't know if that's 3 months, 6 months. In the case of like a spouse that you've been married to for decades, or a very long relationship, you might even want to wait as long as a year before you make major life decisions, selling your house, things like that. Give it some time for you to really decide what you want to do, because if you make snap decisions, for example, like selling the house,
right,
you might end up taking a lowball offer just to I just have to get away from it.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard of it. Like, I had to get away. It reminds me of them. I can't deal with it. I can't be here anymore. And it's just better to move on and be done with it. Well, it might not have been the right decision to make at that time, because there's always a possibility, as it's low of a possibility it may be, there's always the possibility of reconciliation. Now, if that happens on its own, and it's a natural thing, you've had spent time away, you've had the time to reflect on what happened, what was the catalyst for the breakup itself. Was it a big, long series of events, or was it just a one-time thing that you just both felt really emotional about, and like, this is it, it's over? There's always a possibility for reconciliation, and in the gentleman's case that I'm talking about, that was a possibility, and that's where they ended up.
Yeah, so don't burn any bridges after a breakup. Don't go slandering the person on social media. Don't go telling all your friends that, oh, she's crazy, or, oh, I hate him. But when you're in an emotional state, it's really easy to blow things out of proportion.
And there could be a totally acceptable reason for you guys to get back together. Maybe maybe it was just a misunderstanding that just escalated out of proportion. Now, that's not to say that there aren't true reasons for breakups that like, okay, it only happened once, but that's the only once I needed it to happen for me to decide this is not going to go where I thought it was going to go, right? If we're talking about abuse or we're talking about being unfaithful, there are a lot of things that are out there that would cause, a relationship to end. But if it really just ended on a disagreement or something of that nature, even if you're in the heat of the moment, as hard as it is to not lash out and to say things that are hurtful, spiteful, demeaning, because you feel like you need to be vindicated.
When you're hurt, that can turn to frustration and anger. It all kind of balls up together, and that can lead to you saying things that you regret later.
Yeah.
So let that part of it go. Let the future go. You don't know what's going to happen next. You might just, the really crazy thing to try to remember is this might be setting you up for the best thing in your life.
It's always possible.
But you don't know.
Right.
So letting go of the future, letting go of your expectations about what the future is going to hold. It might hold reconciliation. Don't force reconciliation.
Right.
Because that's the other side of the coin, right? If you force it and you're trying to, I can change, I can change. Please take me back. Please.
I'm nothing without you. I need to have you in my life. I don't know what I'm going to do.
It's like Tony Stark said to Peter Parker, if you're nothing without the suit, then maybe you shouldn't have it.
Yeah. I mean, great reference, but yes. But the next part would be if you're going to be in the situation like, well, I now have to find out where am I going. In a lot of cases, in current culture, people are living together, right? They decide that they're serious about it, decide they want to take that next step, and now they're going to be sharing a place. Either, one person moves in with the other, or they go get a place together. And so now that the relationship has been called off for whatever reason, do you have to find a new place to live? And that's always a possibility, right? So I think the next thing you need to do is you have to, what we would refer to as circle the wagons, right?
You're gonna have to deal with your current physical situation. You're gonna need to gather your resources. You're gonna need to muster your support. We talked in the past about having an accountability buddy for goal setting. You need a social support structure. If you're alone and this person was your whole life, that happens, right? Where two people just really click and lean on each other, and whether it's codependent or healthy, where you take up each other's life. And when one of those people is gone, you need someone to talk to at the very least, because rumination, sitting alone in a room and just ruminating on how you feel can lead you some dark paths.
Yeah.
Having someone to bounce ideas off of and say, is this normal? Am I overthinking this? Is this... You need that support structure.
And we talk about, you go down that spiral, that depression spiral, right? You keep telling yourself that, okay, it's your fault. I'm not worth it. I don't know why I bother. I'm not going to try. Why am I even here? And it doesn't take very long that you find yourself at the very lowest part in your life that you find yourself at. And you're like, what do I do now?
Right. Or conversely, you're spiraling in the other way going, I can't believe that she did this. She is evil. She's the devil. She did this to me. Everyone warned me. Maybe they didn't, but in that moment, it feels like everything's awful.
Yep.
And if you're focusing only on that one thing, the relationship itself, then you're not allowing time to find out who you are apart from the relationship. Sometimes you just need to remember, who were you before you started this relationship,
right?
That was the person that they wanted to be in a relationship with in the first place,
right? And that's just something I brought up. Even if you're still in the relationship itself, you should still be that individual. Maybe you're not doing the exact same things you were doing beforehand. You're not going out to the club. You're not having a night out with the girls. Maybe you're not doing those kind of things anymore, right? Because you're focused on the relationship. But you should still have your individuality of my interests and the things that I like, the things that I dislike. And hopefully, when you were in that relationship, that wasn't blended or lost.
Well, that's a really important thing in a relationship or in a breakup is
Right.
you've got to fill your batteries.
Right.
You need to recharge who you are to feel alive, to feel happy, to feel anything at all, honestly.
Yeah, well, to feel yourself, to feel that you're an individual that has individual likes and values, right? And a lot of us, when we get into a relationship, we think that needs to be lost. And then when we get out of that relationship for whatever happens, then we feel even doubly lost because now I'm like, who am I? Because I'm not the guy that I was beforehand. I've always been so and so's boyfriend, or I've been so and so's wife, or whatever. And so focusing on yourself in that sense is like remembering who you were, allowing yourself to grow still, right? Because hopefully we're all growing for the entirety of our life, right?
And having a big breakup like that can actually be a catalyst for self-improvement if you let it be.
Right.
That if you look at the situation and say, well, okay, is there something that my ex brought up in this breakup that, well, upon further reflection, maybe there's some truth in that. Maybe I do need to work on being a little more this or a little less that. There can be ways, healthy ways, where apart from them, you can work on that.
Right. And there does need to be some recognition. And I think that comes down the road, right? But recognition of a rational point of view, not the emotional point of view, right? Emotional point of view, it's always going to be an extreme. I'm a total piece of this, or I am the godsend to all people and it's their fault and they're the worst person on the planet, right? But again, reaching out to any resource that you have, if it's a parent, if it's a friend, if it's a sibling, or in my particular case that we're talking about, it was somebody that I had met years ago and they had looked at me as being a fatherly type of figure. And I was able to mentor in that sense and not make decisions for them, right? But just kind of give them advice.
Be a rational third party that can say, look, I know you're in the middle of something.
Right.
Here's some things to consider.
And I know that you're going to feel the way that you feel, and I'm not telling you not to feel that way. But here is the rational solutions that are out there for you, and you can take them, right? And if you need to take a direction in employment because you maybe you work together, you know, I can't be here anymore. Okay, well, let's talk about what the rational solutions for this is, right? Just don't quit. Go get a job first somewhere else. Apply, right? Go plan for yourself. Because again, we say don't plan. The future is not written. You can't necessarily plan the future out, but you do have to plan for the now. So maybe the relationship is just not reconcilable. And so knowing that you're in the same building as this person and there's going to be drama and you really don't want to have that kind of drama, that you decide that you're going to, okay, I have to find another place to work. Just like you have to find another place to live, right? So plan that out. Think about it.
So when we say don't make any major decisions during the grieving period, this might be one of those things where if you have to do a change like that, just to get yourself that little bit of distance, to be able to focus on yourself, that's something to talk through with another person first, a neutral third party maybe. I feel like that also, when talking about focusing on yourself, that brings up this topic of social media.
Yes.
It is really easy these days to follow the every move of someone that you're interested in.
Right.
Or at least everything they post. So this would be one of those situations where you really want to back off from that.
Right. If you honestly need to make contact with this person, you obviously have their number. You obviously have a way to get a hold of them without having to expose it to the entire world. And I've always been a proponent of not airing your dirty laundry on social media to begin with. But in a breakup, especially with emotions are involved, you're going to say something, you're going to show yourself to be maybe a little bit creepy. If you're constantly following someone and you're constantly making posts and their things and they're having to block you from everything, from every social media outlet that's out there.
And that also brings up the idea here, speaking of communication, that it's not just social media, right? You've got all of that. And if you've got their number and you're used to texting them, it might be really convenient. Your brain just goes right to the habit of, you pick up your phone, you open up your text messages, and there's all these conversations. And going back and rereading everything that you said to each other for the last year. and then typing things to post to them. If you want to along these lines, one really healthy solution that has been recommended by psychologists and counselors for years is write a letter on paper with a pen or pencil, like with your hand. Actually write a letter. There's something about the motor cortex in your brain that the action of writing connects with your brain in a really positive way. Putting ideas like that into words takes them out of the emotional side of the brain and moves them over to the logical side of the brain, where you can just bridging that gap between the hemispheres can help take it away from the trauma side.
Right.
And allow you to process it. So writing a letter to this person, but don't send the letter.
Right.
Just write it. The act of writing it has huge benefits that you can't even understand them while you're doing the thing. And especially if you're feeling like, oh, why would I write a letter and not send it? Write the letter. It does the processing, and it lets you focus your ideas and focus your thoughts. And maybe as you're writing this, you find out that you find some things that matter to you outside of the relationship per se.
Right.
That you didn't think about before, but the act of writing it down and actually thinking about this in such a way that if you're writing a letter to them, you have to put your ideas into sentences.
Right.
And not just the feeling.
Well, I think at this point in time, you're still going to have a lot of emotion that's coming out, but you're going to have to think about, how do I want to express this? How do I want to articulate the things that I want to say to this person in this letter? And so at some point in time, I would think that you stop being in the emotional tunnel and you get up more to the front part where your thinking parts are, right?
Right. We're joining up what we call the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain.
Right.
Prefrontal cortex, and I want to say the amygdala. I forget.
Medulla oblongata. I'm not too sure, but I know it's something in that area. Right. Anyway,
and then left and right hemispheres, you're joining those up as well, so you can bring basically your whole cognitive process to bear on this through the act of writing it down.
Right.
So that's another topic here that might be useful is journaling.
Yes.
Being able to write out your feelings on the subject helps you, again, all the things that come from writing, but also to see yourself over time, and that you can look back. Maybe day one, you're feeling really trashy and all you can write down is all the bad things.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just writing down all your despair, all your heartache. But on day 30, 40, 50, you start writing hopeful things.
Yep.
Or about new developments or new changes that have happened that, well, I recognize that maybe they were right and I wasn't a very good listener. So I'm taking steps in my mind to work on being a better listener.
Yeah.
And then you can write down, track your progress over time, and look back on day 60. When you look back on day 1, you're going to recognize that you've changed. And that also can be a powerful catalyst.
Yeah. And I would even add to this, while circling your wagons, if you find that you really don't have many wagons, before you go down to anything that's super drastic, that you could reach out to counseling. We've talked about it before. If you feel that you don't have anyone that can help you in this time, reach out to counseling. Reach out to that. There's always going to be a solution, even if it doesn't feel like there's one. There is a solution out there. So this is a plea to people who may get to the point where they feel like there is nothing they can do to make things better. There is a solution out there for you. It may take time. It may not be a quick fix. It's not a press of a button, but it might get you to the point where at least I can start feeling like I'm a person again. I'm alive again, right? We all have those moments where in our life, we got into the lowest point we've ever been in our life and we don't know why we bother, right? We all have that moment. We all have a point of breaking.
Well, along those lines, I want to say, I think that's excellent advice, that you find a person that you can talk to. And if you don't have anyone, consider counseling. Look into it. You might think it's too expensive. Your insurance might cover it and you might not even know it.
Right.
And so one of those other things to think about, that's if you're feeling like, maybe I'm not ready to talk to counseling directly just because I want to work something out first. I don't know why you would say that, but maybe you are.
Yeah.
There are other ways to meet people that you just to meet people, just people, be around people.
Right.
You could take a class, right? The local community college, there's classes available. If anything that you're interested in at all,
Yep.
there's going to be other people around that are also interested in that same thing.
Yep.
If you find a book club, if there's a painting class, or I saw one that was wine tasting and painting, and so you just that seems like the kind of thing where you get to chatting with the person next to you maybe about something, and
maybe it's a Marvel group, maybe it's an anime group, right? Maybe it's a D&D group, something that you're going to be able to go and enjoy and feel like you're getting back positive energy into your life, and you're being able to be that individual again.
And if you meet with these people and you're feeling more like yourself, maybe that's a time where you could reach out and just ask.
Yeah.
Like this man did to you.
Right.
You just ask. You say, I'm going through a hard thing. Do you mind if I bend your ear about that a little bit?
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because the gentleman was someone I had met years ago when I had a card shop that dealt with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and those kind of games of that nature. And he was a kid at the time who came and played. And so you never know where you're going to be able to find that person that's going to be able to offer you that help that you might need, or at least that little bit of advice or some direction to go, right? And in this particular case, it was somebody that he had met because of his particular interest.
And aim for someone stable.
Correct.
Because it's really easy to go to your friends, and your friends are they're your friends, right?
Right.
So if you've got that one friend and you just come to them and you're like, look, I just broke up, and you just complain. If that friend starts to take you down the path of, hey, we should get back at them somehow.
Right. Or I think of the character on How I Met Your Mother. Barney was a womanizer, right? And he was like the worst person to go to for advice on relationships, because every other episode he had somebody new that he was dating or chasing or something of that nature.
Right.
Maybe not someone to talk to about how to maintain a stable relationship.
You want someone who's going to be a stabilizing influence in your life.
Right. The other thing I would say is if the relationship is truly at its end, be as amicable as you can be with this other person. And I realize that's a tall ask, but it doesn't help you to be vicious or have such hatred in you and have it ruminate, as we talked about before, inside of you, and you just focus on the hatred and the resentment and, oh, I can't believe I wasted my time with this person. Be as amicable as you can be. They're going to be out of your life soon, hopefully. Right? Now, caveat, we're talking about relationships where there isn't children involved. That's another thing altogether. And because of that, in this scenario,
and if there are children involved, then that's even more reason to try to be amicable about it, because you're going to be co-parenting with this person for the rest of your child's life, at least.
Yep. We would like to speak to it, not this time. Maybe in a future episode we'll talk about it, but in this one we're talking about just a relationship where it's just you and the other person. Reason being is because we feel that particular situation would demand having its own exclusive episode on.
There's a lot of nuance.
Yes, and this is coming from a person who came from a single parent household, and having to deal with the repercussions of visitations and whatnot. So in the end, if you are in a relationship that definitely is the qualifier of it's abusive or it's not healthy, the right thing to do is probably seek out what's best for you and move on. But if you're in a situation where it seemed like it was a good relationship and it just ended because of one particular incident, do what you can to get through it. As bad as you're going to feel, and that's the reality of it, do what you can to not make decisions out of your emotions.
Let yourself feel the emotions.
Make sure that you circle the wagons, know where your resources are, reach out for advice or mentorship if it applies.
And get yourself a good notebook, get yourself a good pen. Let those things be your friends too.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.